My name is Agnes and I'm an electronic engineer. I'm also a former UKESF scholar.
Hi, I'm Joanna Taylor, UKESF Scholar of the Year 2016 and current Silicon Product Engineer at Graphcore.
Hi, I'm Alice and I'm in my 4th year of studying electrical and electronic engineering at the University of Cambridge, sponsored by CSA Catapult.
Hi all, I am Nishika Chetri and I'm a current UK ESF scholar from Aston University, working for Renesas Electronics.
I'm Isla and I'm a control software engineer at McLaren Automotive.
So I've heard a lot of people share their stories about how they got into electronics, and it's usually very similar. They've known it since they were a little kid. They've taken things apart and things like that, which is really nice for them. However, it was really discouraging when I was growing up and getting into electronics a bit later. So I'm just going to share my story and hope that it resonates with some of you. Well, I did not know I wanted to do electronics growing up at all. I was good at maths, I was good at science, but it just never really clicked that electronics was an option for me. No one came up to me and said, hey, you know, electronics is really cool. And I wish they did, so here I am. Unfortunately, I didn't have the chance to do subjects like electronics in school either. It wasn't an option. In physics class, we had some sort of introduction. We've done a few basic principles and applied them, and that alone was enough to get me really interested. So I did the only reasonable thing you can do with zero experience is apply to university, to an electronic engineering course. And it worked out great. Sure, I had loads to catch up on in the first year, but I've got the full support of staff, and eventually I graduated with a first in 2020.
So how did I get to where I am? I started off with A-levels of maths, further maths, physics and an AS in psychology. Initially, I didn't actually want to go into engineering, as both of my parents have backgrounds in electrical engineering, so I looked at maths and physics degrees. But while I was at university open days, I realised I much preferred the units in electrical and electronic engineering degrees.
So I did my A-levels equivalent qualification from India, which is called the Indian School Certificate, and I had 6 subjects, including maths, physics, chemistry, computer science, English, and a regional language. I had never studied electronics as a subject before starting university. In fact, I did not even know what a microcontroller or a breadboard looked like. But my physics lessons gave me an introduction to some basic concepts like current, voltage, resistors, etc. And current electricity became my favorite chapter. At about the same time, I developed an interest in robotics and started researching some famous robotics engineers. And that's when I found out that a vast majority of them had a degree in electronics. And so I started researching about what electronics involves and realized it was my calling.
So what got me into electronics? Well, it sort of started from engineering. I really enjoyed, maths and physics at school. But I kind of had this idea that I wanted what I did with maths and physics to actually have an impact on the world. So engineering seemed to be the best way to do that. And my course was actually general at first, so I didn't decide to do electronics until I was at uni. And I think it was a combination of a really good placement at Dialogue Semiconductor in my first year, followed by particularly enjoying my electronics modules, and kind of seeing a lot of potential for developing new technology in electronics. I think that's what drove me towards electronics over other kinds of engineering.
At school I was really interested in new technology and I heard about electronics through school careers fairs. I did an electronics GCSE and I really enjoyed this because I was able to design and develop a real product. I made an electronics game to teach a child Spanish. In the end, the product was quite simplistic, but it was really fun to develop, and from this I learnt that engineering and electronics could be really creative. I went on to do maths, physics, further maths and geography at A level, and then I studied electrical and electronics engineering at the University of Glasgow, which is a 5-year master's. I went to a few open days and listened to different talks about the different types of engineering courses, but I found that electronics sounded like the most interesting to me.
So this was the electronic engineering AMANG at the University of Nottingham. This is a very practical, heavy, hands-on course with loads of project work. Quite literally from day one. On day one, we were in labs and working on a little electronic car. That was great. It was really hard work, but it was also loads of fun, just working in teams, working together, learning new stuff and applying in practice what we learned in the lectures beforehand. That really helped put into perspective why we are learning those things.
So I ended up choosing to study a master's degree in electrical and electronic engineering at Bristol University. I chose Bristol as it was a top university, and I realised I had to pick somewhere that I would have to live for at least 4 years. I liked the city so much that I stayed here after graduation. University was hard work but fun. One project I will likely never forget was the buggy project. This is where we had to program a buggy to navigate a checkerboard maze and connect to various black boxes and figure out the circuits inside. It was hard work, but it really brought us together as a group and showed real application of what we had been studying in various courses. It involved programming, control theory, and circuit theory, amongst other skills.
So I study electronic engineering and computer science at Aston University. Now, Aston is one of the top universities in the UK for electronics, and having visited the university on the open days, I really liked the facilities that they provide, and I also found the staff to be very helpful and supportive. And not many universities offered a degree with a combination of electronics and computer science, which is something I was looking for because I'm extremely passionate about coding. I have been coding since year 9, and I was really looking for a degree which had a combination of 3 of my favorite subjects, that is maths, physics and computer science. My university experience so far has been nothing less than amazing, and I say that because the course is just so practical and hands-on. Like, whatever you study in the lecture, you get to apply it in the labs. And from the very start, we were in the labs building circuits with components that I didn't even know existed. But it was not overwhelming, and the reason I say that is at the commencement of the course, we were taught the basics of electronics, which was very helpful. Like, having zero experience, it just helped me build that strong foundation which I needed down the line. But if I had to choose my favorite experience, it has to be the group projects. So in my first year, we made a tracking system for lab equipment using RFID technology. And in my second year, we made a very fancy digital clock with sensors. So it had like a temperature sensor, and it changed the color of the neopixels as per the room temperature, which was very exciting. And both the projects were a success. And most importantly, it gave me a sense of satisfaction that I made this.
So I'm studying at the University of Cambridge. The reasons I chose it, firstly, it's obviously got a good reputation, which helped. It's also a general course for the first 2 years, which was helpful to me because I wasn't completely sure what kind of engineering I wanted to do. And I'm really glad it was general because electronic engineering is very different to sort of the electricity you do at physics at school. And I probably wouldn't have gone for electronics if I hadn't been able to experience it a bit first. And also the Cambridge course has quite a lot of theory, so the balance between practical work and theory was kind of what I liked, because I quite like the theory parts rather than actually sort of hammering things. So I have been enjoying my university experience. It's obviously quite challenging. There are so many challenges with engineering, but I guess that's part of what draws me to it. The modules I've enjoyed, definitely the electronics based ones. I found especially the sort of smaller scale stuff, so not so much like a power grid or whatever, but things like embedded systems, so like Internet of Things. I've also been doing a module on things like quantum and nanotechnology, the design of like very small devices called transistors, and like circuit design. I quite like all the sort of smaller scale stuff, as you can tell from my master's project, which is molecular electronic devices.
The courses were pretty similar across different universities. All of them had a general first year and the opportunity to study abroad. But what I really liked about Glasgow University is that it was a campus university in a city. So the university itself felt quite cohesive, but you still had the whole city to explore. I also loved being near the Highlands, going skiing in Glencoe and hiking in the summer. I loved university. I loved studying with students from all around the world, and I found that Glasgow was such a friendly city. I never really ended up specialising at university because I enjoyed such a broad range of courses, from studying semiconductor materials right down at the electron level to circuit design and also robotics. I worked on some really exciting projects. In third year, we designed and built an autonomous maze-solving robot. In this project, we developed a special feature where we attached electrodes to our forearms and used the muscle signals to move the robot backwards and forwards. We also tried with brainwaves, but they were really hard to detect. Then in fourth year, I was part of a team that designed and built a search and rescue drone for Police Scotland. And then in fifth year, we built a life-size replica of BB-8 from Star Wars, which could be controlled using an app on your phone and had a levitating head.
With the UKESF Scholarship Scheme, I spent 3 summers working for Imagination Technologies in their Power VR hardware department. This was spread across both the Kings Langley and Bristol offices. Having this real-world experience really helped with my studies as I started to see how some of the subjects could be used in the real working world. I spent the bulk of my time in verification and learnt a lot about how the silicon chips are designed and verified in RTL.
During summer breaks, I've done various internships. After my first and second years, I worked with a company called CSD, testing their simulation software. And I was in my third year when I got the UKESF scholarship, which was sponsored by Vivamos, which was a small startup at the time. It is now part of Northern X-ray. They make image detectors, kind of like the camera in your phone, except this is used for mainly for X-ray, looking into things without destroying them, kind of like think of airport security, baggage check, and that sort of thing. So there at Northern, I spent the summer working and developing a test process for a circuit board that the main product uses. And this was my own project from start to finish. And it really went from start to finish in a few weeks. And that allowed me to see how just from a list of requirements you can get to an actual product that is being used at manufacturing. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Right now I am on my year-long placement with Renesas Electronics. Renesas develops semiconductor products for different applications across a range of sectors, including automotive, industrial, etc. And I work as an embedded systems software developer. So I develop software for microprocessors, which can then be used for automating factories, etc. And it has been such a great learning experience for me. And I say so because I have been able to develop my programming skills. I have learned a new programming language. I have been working in a team developing my soft skills like communication and decision making, and most importantly, I have been involved in the development of products which are going into manufacturing, which is extremely exciting because when the product will be out in the market, I can literally point to it and be like, I have helped develop that. I have made this. So it's just an amazing experience.
So I've had 2 work placements while I've been at uni. So my first year through UKESF, I received the Dialogue Award for Female Undergraduates, and part of that was a placement at Dialogue for 8 weeks, a Dialogue Semiconductor. And I was on the digital logic team there, which was brand new to me when I started it. And I learned how to use Verilog, which is a hardware description language, which is basically kind of like code that describes electrical circuits. And I worked on that a bit, and I was also helping someone with simulations for some research and development. And then last year, so for my 3rd year, I received my scholarship sponsored by CSA Catapult. And CSA Catapult, so it stands for Compound Semiconductor Applications Catapult. I was doing on the embedded systems team there. So I did a little bit of C programming and programming a microcontroller, and also some more hardware stuff, so using a software called Altium to design a PCB and build it on their prototyping line. And it was really nice because I was on a team of just me and my manager. I really got to get stuck in on the project we were working on.
With the UKESF scholarship, I had a placement at Arm in Cambridge, developing firmware for some of their chips. Arm develops CPUs and GPUs for low-power devices for companies like Apple and Samsung. I learned a lot about how industry works and developed my programming skills a lot. But ultimately, I felt like C and C++ programming wasn't really for me, and I liked working on bigger physical projects. For my master's, I decided to go to Singapore and developed a low-cost ultrasound imaging device for scanning materials for hidden cracks. I enjoyed a mix of the hardware development and the software for this project, and it was also a great opportunity to travel.
Since graduating back in 2017, I have been working for Graphcore in the Product Test and Diagnostics team. Graphcore creates a new type of processing unit we call the IPU, Intelligence Processing Unit. Much in the same way a GPU was designed to be optimized for graphics, the IPU is optimized specifically for AI applications. Working for Graphcore has been a great opportunity for me, as I have been here since we were a small company of roughly 70 people, all the way up to where we are now with more than 400 employees across multiple offices globally. I have learned a lot in such a short period of time, and I had opportunities to do different things I just wouldn't have had at a larger company. So in my team, we work on testing the physical product. This is from the chip level all the way to the finished product, the M2000, which is a full chassis made of 4 IPUs and sits in a rack in a data center. I have been fortunate enough to have done all sorts of things in my role, such as designing the test systems, writing test programs, and even done some PCB design for our circuit board. Currently, I am the technical lead for our HTOL, High Temperature Operating Lifetime Reliability System, which means that I am responsible for making sure that we have a fully working system that can be used to run HTOL for many thousands of hours. I hope hearing my experience will help you to decide what choices to make for your future career.
Having gained some experience in embedded system software development, I have realized that I have an interest in the software aspect of electronics and embedded systems. So I want to specialize as an embedded systems software engineer. And I am currently enrolled on an ME degree. So I'm planning to apply for chartered engineer a few years after graduation, and that's how I am going to slowly pave my way into robotics, where I want to develop products and solutions which can help make businesses more sustainable.
So I am still at university, but I have plans for post-graduation. I've accepted an offer to work in Japan for a company called Asbil, and they do sort of automation of things like manufacturing or automation of buildings, and I'm going to be a technology development engineer there. So I think my experiences on my placements really helped me in the interviews. especially because my course is more theoretical, being able to show that I had actually done some things and I knew how to apply my knowledge, I think was really helpful for getting the job offer.
I applied for a lot of graduate schemes in my final year, but I became interested in McLaren after I heard an interview with Caroline Hargrove, who developed the McLaren F1 simulator. I looked at their graduate scheme and saw one in automotive, where graduates would get to move around different departments before picking the department they would like to work in. This sounded great to me, as I wanted to try something a bit different, and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do after university. I joined McLaren Automotive as a graduate in 2019, which was the same year that I graduated. McLaren is 3 companies in one. There's racing, which looks after Formula 1 and Formula E, automotive, where they develop the supercars, and applied, which is more research and development. I was a graduate in automotive, and my first rotation was as a transmission controls software engineer. I worked mainly on the Speedtail, which is the fastest McLaren ever built. It has a top speed of 250 miles an hour, and they had to carry out tests on a NASA runway because there are no roads long enough to test the max speed. During this time, I was developing and testing the software for the gearbox, and from day one, I knew that this was the role where I wanted to end up. I'm now a controls software engineer for the body electronics team. This means I look after a broad range of features, from ADAS, which is adaptive cruise control, to the anti-theft alarm, to accessing the vehicle. At the moment, I'm working on Artura, which is a hybrid supercar. It's a completely new architecture and platform, which means all the challenges are new for the whole team, and it's a really exciting project to work on. My day is really varied. My role consists of developing the software, testing it on the vehicle, going to the test track to carry out tests, and analysing data logs from the tests to understand any bugs in the software. This has been a short overview of my journey into the career I have now. One thing I have learned is that there's such a range of opportunities in electronics, and although everyone has a different path, you will end up doing something that you love. Thanks for watching.
I am now a graduate electronics engineer, and in this role, I'm on a 2-year rotation, just moving around the company, working on a bunch of different projects, just generally getting an idea of what anything an electronic engineer may end up doing. So by the time the 2nd year is up, I should have a better idea about where I may want to work afterwards, or in what area, what specialization, things like that. And I guess that is all. So